One of the most shocking events in European history saw the French king, Louis XVI, be led to the guillotine, an execution device he had introduced to France. He was led up the steps of the wooden scaffold and was passed over to the executioner, who prepared his final moments. In one drop from the slanted blade, the head of the French king was taken off. There's some debate as to whether the blade went through his neck or chin, but this was most certainly the most ruthless and prominent moment of the French Revolution. The French had executed their king, and they dumped his body and head in a roughly dug grave inside the Madeleine Cemetery, where many other enemies of the Revolution were buried. But decades after the execution, Louis XVI's head was exhumed and dug up. But where does it lie today, and where has it been buried? What was found inside of his grave was shocking and showed how the French tried to erase their king's remains. And to support, please make sure to subscribe. Louis XVI was not a cruel tyrant in the traditional sense. He was born in 1754 and he became king in 1774, inheriting a kingdom already burdened by debt, poor harvests and growing discontent. By personality, Louis was shy, indecisive and more interested in hobbies like lockmaking and hunting than politics. His marriage to the Austrian Archduchess Marie Antoinette did little to improve his popularity, as many French people disliked her foreign origins and extravagant spending. By the late 1780s, France was deep in financial crisis. Wars, including support for the American Revolution, had drained the treasury. The government faced bankruptcy, yet Louis resisted reforms that would tax the nobility. When he finally called the Estates General in 1789, it opened the floodgates for revolution. The Third Estate, commoners, soon declared itself the National Assembly, sparking events that led to the storming of the Bastille in July of 1789. The monarchy's authority began to crumble, and in 1791, Louis and his family attempted to escape Paris in the infamous flight to Vannes, but they were caught and brought back in humiliation. Trust in the king had collapsed. Too many revolutionaries. Louis was no longer a ruler, but a traitor to the people. By 1792, France was at war with Austria and Prussia. The revolution was becoming more radical, and royalists were suspected of conspiring with foreign enemies. On the 10th of August 1792, revolutionaries stormed the Tuileries Palace, and the monarchy was effectively overthrown. Louis XVI was arrested and placed in the Temple prison with his wife and children. The monarchy was abolished, and France was declared a republic. Now the question arose, what should be done with the former king? The new National Convention put Louis on trial. He was charged with conspiring against liberty and national security, accused of plotting with foreign powers and encouraging civil war. The evidence included secret documents found in a hidden iron chest in the palace. The trial was tense and deeply political. To some deputies, executing the king was necessary to secure the revolution. To others, sparing him might prevent France from falling deeper into violence. After long debates, the convention voted. The verdict: Louis Capet, formerly king of the French, was guilty of treason, and on the 20th of January 1793, by a narrow margin, the convention voted for his execution. At dawn, on the 21st of January 1793, Louis was awakened in his cell at the Temple prison. He spent his final hours in prayer with his confessor, the Irish priest, Abbé Edgeworth. At about 8 a.m, Louis was taken from the prison in a carriage. Thousands of armed soldiers lined the route to prevent rescue attempts or riots, and the crowd was silent, not cheering, not shouting, only watching. Many later remarked on the eerie calm of that January morning. The carriage crossed Paris slowly, heading to the Place de la Révolution, formerly known as Place Louis XV, where a large guillotine had been set up. This was the same square where the statue of his grandfather, Louis XV, once stood. The guillotine was a new invention, introduced in 1792 as a more humane and efficient method of execution. It symbolised equality in death. Nobles and commoners alike will be executed in the same way. For Louis XVI, it was both a political and symbolic instrument. By dying on the guillotine, he would become not just a man punished for treason, but a king stripped of divine privilege. When Louis arrived at the scaffold, he stepped down from the carriage calmly. His hands were tied, though he resisted at first, saying he should die as a king. Abbé Edgeworth whispered, "Son of St. Louis, ascend to heaven." Louis then addressed the crowd. Witnesses reported his final words, "I die innocent of all the crimes imputed to me. I forgive those who are the cause of my death, and I pray that my blood may not fall on France." He tried to continue, but drum rolls drowned out his voice. Guards quickly pushed him beneath the blade, and at 10:22 a.m. the guillotine fell. The executioner, Charles Henry Sansom, held up the severed head for the crowd to see. Cries of "Vive la République" echoed across the square. The immediate response in Paris was mixed. Some in the crowd cheered, but others went silent or even wept. Many felt uneasy. A king had been killed not by God or by fate, but by the will of the people, and across Europe monarchs were horrified. To them the execution was not just the death of a man, but an attack on the monarchy itself. Britain, Spain, and other powers soon declared war on revolutionary France. The execution also hardened divisions within France between royalists, moderates, and radical revolutionaries. After the execution, the body and head of King Louis XVI were taken into the Madeleine Cemetery. His remains were placed into a coffin, and this was placed on the back of a cart. Inside the cemetery, a grave had been dug, and it wasn't too deep. The coffin was placed inside the grave, and the head of Louis XVI was then placed between his legs, which was to show that he died in disgrace. This practice was done for key offenders and criminals, but then quicklime was thrown over the coffin, and this was done to try and decay his remains and body quicker, so that no trace of him would ever be found. But this did not completely work, because in the January of 1815, the call was made to exhume the bodies of King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, who had also met the same fate. Marie's body was found quicker, but there was less of Louis XVI to be found. It was claimed that a deep trench near the wall being opened in our presence, we discovered some earth mingled with lime and several small pieces of board, indicative of a coffin. The search was then carried on with the greatest care, but instead of a bed of pure lime, as round as the Queen's coffin, we found that the earth and lime had been mixed, but that there was a greater proportion of the latter substance. In this mixture of earth and lime we discovered the bones of a man, several of which were on the point of crumbling to dust. The skull was covered with lime and placed between the leg bones. Fragments of clothes were carefully looked for, but none were discovered. We collected all the remains and placed them, together with some pieces of lime, in a cloth brought for the purpose. Although the spot in which the body was found corresponds with that pointed out by several eyewitnesses of the interment, and situation of the head left no doubt as its to identity. So, the head and fragmentary skeletal remains of Louis XVI were discovered. The grave diggers and officials were in no doubt that this was the remains of the king, and it was no secret where his grave actually was. But what happened next? It was clear the quicklime had done its job, and some was even found on the king's skull. The remains were placed into a new box, and they were then prepared to be given a decent burial. Today, King Louis XVI is buried inside the royal crypt within the Basilia of St. Denis, and it's interred within the same wooden chest that it was buried in within a vault. The vault is covered with a marble slab marking Louis's final resting place. The head and skull was in better shape than the rest of the king's remains, but it was still covered in lime. There is a possibility, of course, that this has still taken effect, and over 200 years that the lime has disintegrated the skull, leaving very little left of King Louis XVI inside of his new tomb. The vault hasn't been opened since the day of burial, meaning we don't actually know today the exact state of his remains. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.